You want to be a writer, but you can't come up with a good story idea that will help you launch your writing career. What do? Well, maybe you can use those stories that inspired you to write and use them as a base to launch your writing career. My name is Deepak Thomas. I write fantasy and science fiction inspired by Indian culture and history. And for the longest time, I too struggled with getting ideas for my work. On one hand, I do have a lot of stories I want to tell, but you need to have ideas that are marketable, the ideas that are easy to sell. And what do I mean by that? These are ideas which you can pitch to a person and they'll immediately understand. If your story needs a whole paragraph for you to explain to a listener, then probably you will have a tough time selling those ideas. And again, if you're just writing for the fun of it and to express yourself, by all means, go for those. So, if you want to make a career out of writing, you have to come up with ideas that have a market. And not only do those ideas need to have a market, those ideas are something that you have to be personally passionate about. So, you can tell a story that you will enjoy telling and your readers will enjoy reading. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to pick up a story that inspired you and you enjoyed and make that into something that is new and fresh and imaginative. So, how do you do that? Here are my 5 recommendations to do it. My first technique would be to combine 2 ideas that you know. For example, Inception was marketed quite famously as The Matrix meets Ocean's 11. So, it had the high sci-fi concept of The Matrix about being lost in someone else's mind. Plus, it had the sort of heist structure that was made famous by movies like Ocean's 11. In many ways, it is a combination of 2 very famous different ideas. So you could do the same. What are the 2 different stories that you loved reading and are very popular? And try to do something that's not been done. Maybe you can combine Harry Potter with Mahabharata. Maybe you can combine Romeo and Juliet with Star Wars. Take 2 ideas that you really enjoy, that are also popular, and do something with it that is unique and fresh and hasn't been done before. The second technique would be to take a story that you love and explore something that they didn't show. For example, Robert Kirkman was a struggling comic book writer who spent a big chunk of his 20s trying to come up with the next big comic book idea, but he was failing. So one day when he and his friends were staying up all night watching zombie movies, he had a brilliant idea. Even though he loved zombie movies, he hated the fact that they never show what happened after the zombie invasion was done. So that's how he came up with the concept of The Walking Dead, which became a super hit comic book and TV series. This is something you can do with your own stories. Take a story you really love and take an aspect of it that wasn't shown. Or maybe you want to write a story about how Jay and Viru became friends before the events of show. These are all story ideas you can think about. What are your favorite stories and what aspect of it would you like to have it explored? Another great technique is to say a famous story from a different point of view. Chitra Banerjee has made a whole career by retelling Hindu epics from different points of view. So she wrote the Palace of Illusions, which was Mahabharata from Draupadi's point of view. She wrote The Forest of Enchantments, which was Ramayana from Sita's point of view. You can try this with your own very famous stories. Change the point of view and retell those stories and really explore how the same events will be perceived differently or experienced differently by somebody else in the room. Another thing you could try is change the setting of your favorite story. For example, Alien was famously marketed as Jaws in space, and Lion King is widely considered to be Hamlet in the African savannah. You can take your favorite story and change the setting. You could take classic stories like William Shakespeare is famous for having his stories adapted into different settings, but you can even do that with stories that are famous in your own culture and change it to a different setting and context. Maybe a sci-fi version of Cinderella or a fantasy version of Kyuki Saas Bhi Kabhi Hogi. You can try and you can go crazy with these ideas. My last technique that I would suggest is the idea of to deconstruct your favorite story. So deconstruction is the idea of taking elements from your story and breaking it apart. A famous example of this is Game of Thrones, which takes the tropes of fantasy and flips it or deconstructs it. It takes the trope of the noble king and shows how a noble king would be treated in an unfair society. Or it takes the trope of a dragon queen and shows a dragon queen could be potentially dangerous to society around. You can do the same with your favorite stories. Maybe you could take Star Wars and show and dwell on the mistreatment of robots. Or you could take a zombie movie and deconstruct it and see how we are mistreating zombies just like we mistreat other members of our society, even if they are good people. Asking what if questions around your favorite stories and really questioning a lot of the assumptions that you are expected to take in those stories can really help you create a brand new perspective. These are, of course, some of the methods of converting your favorite story into a brand new idea that you can use for yourself. That said, do not plagiarize other people's work. If you are creating your own version of the story, make sure that you create your own new characters, your own new world, and you do not use copyrighted material because that is illegal, first of all, and unethical as well. On the other hand, whenever you are creating a new story, don't just write a sequel or a retread of an existing thing. Instead, put your own spin on it, create something fresh so people are experiencing something new and unique. And if you found this video helpful, you can check out my story, The Lion of Bharat, available for free on my website, link in description. And if you like this video, please do check out my other videos as well. And with that, I'll say goodbye. Keep reading, keep writing, and keep enjoying your life.